This video, what I'd like to share with you are the 3 #1 choice books that I would insist any entrepreneur absolutely makes first priority to read. And if you haven't read these books, then you're in the right video. And the reason I say that is because, out of so many books that are published, there's 80,000 a month globally, it's so easy to get lost in the shuffle. And the reason we need to read books or listen to audiobooks if that's your preferred method is because the formal education system no longer prepares us adequately to learn 21st century rules for living. In fact, if you talk to any successful person today, and you can measure success in a variety of ways, either financially, where most people keep score, or emotional health or spiritual fulfillment. But if you ask any of those, where did most of their education come from that made the biggest difference in their life? They would say it would be their informal education, not their formal education. So, school has its place and teaches us predominantly how to pass tests and work for somebody else. But for the entrepreneurs amongst us that really want to go out into the world, the information is available. We're living in a time now where you can ask Siri the answer to questions that your business teacher wouldn't be able to answer. So, that's not the issue. Access to information is no longer the issue. It's selecting the right quality of information to really make a difference. So out of the myriad of books that are out there and promises, etc., I want to pick 3 that out of my experience and the hundreds of books that I've read, I think will make a crucial difference. I've read these books several times and I've applied and consistently apply the insights and knowledge that I get out of them, and it's made a profound difference in my life. So that's why I feel qualified just to be able to say, hey, look, go get these, because without the right guidance, you can waste a lot of time. So let's get started. The first book, which I'm sure many of you have probably heard of, and some of you I'm sure will have read, but if so, read again, is the ultimate classic. It is the book that virtually started the entire personal development movement, and I have personally met more millionaires that are millionaires because of this book, and even billionaires that are billionaires because of this book, than anything else that's ever been published in humanity's history. And that is the classic Think and Grow Rich by the late and great Napoleon Hill. Now let me tell a little bit of backstory for those that aren't aware of how this book came about. If you go back to the world's first billionaire in the 1800s, you can imagine what a billion was like in 1800s. It's pretty impressive today, but back then, it's wow. And that was a gentleman called Andrew Carnegie, who was the richest man in the world. He was a Scottish guy, and he was a steel magnate that had really made his fortune in the post-industrial revolution. And so Andrew Carnegie kind of came to the conclusion that, something, I'm the richest man in the world, I'm tremendously successful, and when I die, all of the information that I've acquired on how to become successful kind of dies with me. Because up until that point, nobody had really formalized a study of actual success. So he commissioned a young reporter, a penniless guy, struggling to make his way in the world, called Napoleon Hill. And he said to young Napoleon, he says, listen, I'm going to make a deal with you. I would like you to dedicate 20 years of your life to going to study this thing called success. And the way that you're going to do it is by going and interviewing all of the most successful people in the world, and I will arrange the interview. I will write letters of introduction. And it's kind of like, if Richard Branson or Donald Trump, wrote a letter getting you an audience with somebody else who's successful, they'd probably open the door if it came from a high recommendation. So he wrote 500 letters of introduction to people all over the world that were the most successful in their field, not just financially, but again, emotionally, spiritually, and otherwise. People that made a real difference on shaping the world that you and I now live in today. And he said, but here's the catch. I want you to devote 20 years of your life to it, but I'm not going to pay you. And when Napoleon Hill told his friends and his family and the sort of peer group that he surrounded himself with at that time, they thought he was crazy. You want to work 20 years for the richest man in the world and he's not even prepared to pay you? You can imagine if there was an internet in those days, there'd be a few blogs and a few tweets and a few hate websites sprung up around Mr. Carnegie. But Napoleon Hill was different. He says, you know something? No, I understand why he's doing it. He wants me to be able to use the information that I'm learning to see if it works. Very smart man. And Andrew Carnegie held a stopwatch behind his back when he gave the offer of the proposal to Napoleon Hill. And he was going to give him 60 seconds to make that decision. And Napoleon Hill made the decision in under 60 seconds, and he says, yes, I'm in. But he didn't spend 20 years of his life on that mission. He spent 25 years of his life. And he summed up his entire life's work in a book called Think and Grow Rich. And that book has more wisdom, information, and fundamental principles around success than virtually anything else. As I said, it virtually started the personal development industry. And if you have the ability to go out and get a copy of that or download a copy of that and really apply what's in it, I guarantee you the principles in Think and Grow Rich that applied in the 1930s apply just as relevantly today, if not more so. So Think and Grow Rich is my absolute first recommendation. As I said, one of my business mentors, who is a billionaire, multi-billionaire, was parking cars when he was a young kid, and somebody drove up in a Ferrari, and he kind of looked at the Ferrari as if to say, how do I get a car like that? And the guy gave him a tip for parking his car as a valet, and he gave him a dollar bill, and on the dollar bill he wrote, Think and Grow Rich. That's how you get your Ferrari. That gentleman today is worth multiple billions of dollars, and I'm very proud to say as a close friend and mentor, but all came from that book. You look at somebody like Bob Proctor, a stalwart in the personal development industry. Bob, who's in his late 70s now and still warming up with more energy than you and I, amazing guy, carries Think and Grow Rich around with him wherever he goes. He's always reading it. The guy could probably read it backwards in his sleep, but he still reads it. Because once you've read a book once, you're not an expert. I have a video here on my channel called Learning How to Learn. And if you go and have a look at that, you'll understand why it's so important to keep reading and keep going into the information more than once. So my first recommendation, above anything else, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill. The second book I'm going to recommend to you is a small, easy to read book, but a book that's probably made a profound difference in my businesses over the years, and a book that really became a philosophy of how a lot of my businesses operated. And that is a book by an author called Ken Blanchard, who's wrote some incredible little books and pearls of wisdom for management, entrepreneurs, and leaders. And it's a book called Raving Fans. And Raving Fans I love because it's such a simple philosophy but such a profound shift. And again, when you apply it in today's world of 21st century business, you start to understand that people that are learning techniques on how to sell more haven't yet caught up with the fact that people do not like to be sold. In fact, a product is never sold, people buy. And if you can understand that in business everything is a relationship, then your customers can be your best sales force, bar none. Especially in today's world where social media is instantaneous. It used to be that if you go into a restaurant and got a lousy meal, you wouldn't go back and the restaurant wouldn't care. But today, before you've finished your dessert, you've put something on TripAdvisor, and that's just cost that business a huge amount of customers. So, developing raving fans is more important now than it has ever been. And this book sums up some incredible principles, very simple, very easy to apply, to master the psychology and some 3-step process on how to really make your customers your best sales force. Because what's the alternative? The alternative is you get a brand terrorist. Somebody who will tweet or put on TripAdvisor things that unfortunately in today's world affect thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people at the press of a button. Raving Fans will keep you in a mindset of constantly being able to serve your customers' needs at the highest level and enjoy the process and build that level of trust, like, and respect and rapport that really is what business is founded on. Now, I've built some companies in my time. One of them being the energy chain of health and fitness clubs. And when I founded Energy back in 2002, I think it was, with my co-partners Jan Spatikia, who's a great entrepreneur, and David Beatty, we sat down and we looked at the club industry and we realized we didn't have the resources of some of the big players, the Virgin Actives or the Fitness First or the 24-hour Fitnesses. We couldn't compete with them on budget. But in our second year of operation, we won Flame Awards, which is like the industry Oscars for service in the health club industry. And the reason we did that was all down to our policy of developing raving fans. Now, I teach a whole section of that at my Millionaire Business School, but for now, if you want a shortcut to it, please go read that book by Ken Blanchard, and I promise you'll get a ton of value for less than half an hour invested in your time. The final book I want to recommend to you is, a book that some of you may or may not be ready for. And I don't say that from a place of thinking that I'm at a high level, you're at a low level. That's not where I come from. I picked up this book 15 years ago and it didn't make sense to me. So I just want to preempt this, that it's relevant for where people are on their journey. But as we move forward and humanity starts to accelerate in its levels of opening up higher levels of awareness, this book, I think, that was written a few years ago now, is more relevant and more powerful to more people than it's ever been before. I also think that it is such a game changer for when you understand the content, that it can have a profound impact on your life at every single level. The gentleman that wrote this book unfortunately recently passed away, and in my opinion he should have won a Nobel Prize for his work in this book. Unfortunately, the people who give out the Nobel Prizes, in my opinion, probably don't calibrate at a high enough level of awareness to recognize the genius that this man put together. And again, for some people, it may not be the right time. That's okay. But I'd be doing you a disservice in a video that says the 3 most important books I think you should read immediately if I didn't recommend this one, because it's had a really profound impact on my life. And that is the book called Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins. And Power versus Force really is a special book. It was the first time that I came across somebody who had the ability to finally delineate different levels of consciousness into a model that really gives practical value in terms of understanding different people, understanding ourselves, and understanding why so many people either don't get along or do get along, or why we appear to be speaking different languages when we're in the same room talking the same English. So Power versus Force is, I'll tell you up front, the first third of the book or quarter of the book is fairly heavy. It talks about chaos theory. It talks about the latest discoveries in quantum physics. It talks about, some language patterns that, for someone like me who didn't qualify at school or dropped out of school at 16 and didn't go to college, I found a little challenging. But if you can get through the first quarter of the book, I promise you, the rest of it is like poetry. And it really allows you to understand the difference between fighting with life and getting what you want by trying to force it, and aligning with universal principles to be able to allow life to flow. And so you move from a distinction between power and force. Force is 1 million British soldiers saying India belongs to Britain. Power is one tiny little guy in a loincloth with no weapons that was able to release the country from that grip. Force is building a large wall of concrete and barbed wire to separate East and West Germany. Power is the soul and the heart of the people that exploded into reality to tear that wall down without a single shot being fired. Understanding the energetic principles behind that is something that you'll get a real insight into through that book. So they're my 3 key recommendations. I promise you an ROI that would definitely be worthy of your time. So if any of those resonate, or you start to understand or get a little bit of a feel for what you think really talks to you, please go get those books, go start applying them. Think and Grow Rich is an incredible wellspring of information for you to become financially independent and wealthy by applying principles that do not change. Like gravity. Gravity doesn't have mood swings. And it doesn't care if you're a great person or a lousy person. If you step off the roof, you're going down. That's gravity. It works on universal law. Think and Grow Rich operates on universal law. And I've met many people that I've recommended the book to that have said, well, I read it 3 months ago, why aren't I rich yet? It's not about what you read, it's about applying what you read and having it resonate and permeate as to who you are. Raving Fans is just a great way of reminding you that business in the 21st century is no longer B2B and B2C. It's not business to business or business to consumer. It's human to human. And when you understand how to cultivate a human relationship in business, your sales will take care of themselves. And Power versus Force will introduce you to the fact that the physical world around us is not everything that you appear or think it to be. That everything that we experience in reality started with a thought. Think about it. Whether it's the computer you're watching this on right now, the clothes you're wearing, or the house you're living, everything began as a thought. What is it that's the mechanics behind translating that thinking into action? How do you raise your level of awareness to get more power so that you can have a deeper sense of fulfillment as to who you are to be able to serve the world with at a higher level? That, my friends, is Power versus Force. Anyway, there are my 3 book recommendations. Please go and check them out, make it real, and leave your comments in the section below to let me know some of the things that you've got out of the books. I'd love to read those. And between us, let's work on making ourselves the best version of who we are so we can contribute more to the rest of humanity. Hey, it's Peter. I'm back again. Just wanted to say thank you for watching. Although remember, knowing and not doing is the same as not knowing. So it's about applying what you learn in order to make a real difference. Now, if you'd like to continue your journey of being an even better you, please subscribe to my channel as I upload new videos each and every week, and I would love you to be the first person to see them. Also, please remember to click like and leave a comment. I do respond personally, but more importantly, if you could think of one person you want to share this with, you think it'll make a difference for, then go ahead and do that now. And let's together see if we can make the world a little bit better today than it was yesterday.